Computer. All right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome everyone to Cyber Insanity, the podcast from Goliath Cybersecurity Group with your host Andrew Berkuta
and Angelo Longo, right with the halo.
The one with the halo, right?
Angel. I'm an angel.
Well, if I stand over here, I have you know, I don't know what that is, like a helmet head. So Angelo, I got this really interesting podcast for our listeners today, because I think this is a requested one, a one that I hear a lot of concern about. Everything you want to know about passwords, right? We see in the news that there are companies, large companies, utility companies, you name it, doctor's offices even.
Yep.
It seems like something has been stolen and you better change your password. Which gets you thinking, and a lot of comments of, hey, so I only use a handful of passwords and that means I can't use them. Or are they all susceptible to being on the dark web, or are they not to be used anymore? Like, what's best practices? Because I did my, 7 characters and 2 special characters or whatever. Isn't 8 good enough anymore? They said it would be trillions of years before you can decode it, and now you're telling me it's not. What happened?
Yeah.
Last time I checked, this wasn't a million years.
I'm just looking up because it was I just saw a new and updated one. Decoding times per password size.
Yeah.
And so that the reality is computing gets faster.
Yeah.
And that, the millions of years, every time we make an advancement, it gets more small. It gets smaller.
Yeah.
And so when you start looking at it, these things, the 8-character passwords are, I think let's see, timeline. They're saying 6 characters or under is mere seconds. And some of the more complicated 8 characters may be a few hours to decode. But that's complicated. And that will decrease over time. Time to decoding will decrease.
And add a distributed environment now that
exactly.
There's dark web data centers, if you will, or virtual environments where they pool together computing resources. I think with the math that you've just given us, that's a reasonable amount of payoff for a bad actor to want to break an 8-character password.
And remember, a lot of people make passwords. A lot of people make their username with proprietary information, but also make their passwords with proprietary information. Your dog's name, your career, your middle name, your last name, your first name, some random word. It's just this is what people do because they want to remember the password. Well,
and let's face it. I mean, let's say I had a child. His name was Bob or Robert, right? Because that's the more characters, right? You're not going to guess Robert versus Bob, but let's say it's Robert. Invariably, somebody will just sit there and go, okay, this thing is saying I have to put a password in, and it needs numbers and a special character. So what's the let's say it's 3 numbers. Robert 1, 2, 3. Oh, and a special character. What's
bang.
the easiest one to
exclamation
remember?
Point.
Exclamation point. Right. So it's Robert 1, 2, 3 exclamation point. Nobody would guess that, right?
Yeah.
Fat chance.
It's pretty much one of the more easy things to predict in passwords.
So if I was actually going after me and I would do my FaceTime or my Facebook or my Instagram or whatever it is that I can get my hands on about me in this case.
Yeah, me.
Find out my kid's name is Robert. Well, that's going to be the first thing I'm going to check. It's kind of like, was it Zoolander? One of the passwords that he was guessing was, some of these easy ones. It's like, okay, people, well, I think we've progressed pass the Zoolander password, right? Okay, so now that you've determined we can't use the 5, we can't use the 8,
Yep.
then they say, oh, now I'm seeing, 12 with complex characters or some alternate characters or something like that. Aren't we going to run into the same thing? Because you just said computing is getting faster. And we had Dave Marcus from Intel saying that iteratively, I'll get it right, iteratively, computing is almost exponential in its processing power, in its capability and stuff. We're fighting an uphill battle.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And so I think today's call really to us is on this podcast, how do we make this a survivable strategy for the common layman who is not having degrees and security pedigrees or whatever it is that are required to understand this landscape, this threat landscape? How do you make it survivable? Angelo, what do we do? What can we use? What can we do to set a password? Because everybody's doing it.
Let me start with something.
Sure.
What is my favorite saying?
Yeah. It's something with complexity, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Complexity is the enemy of security. Here's the one place where it probably isn't. Because complexity does matter. Now, complexity does not have to be a bunch of random characters.
Okay.
This is where people get so caught up in the password 123 bang bang. I have to put some more things in there.
Password generators, right?
Yeah.
They're free tools online now.
Yes, absolutely.
A random password generator, but I can't remember that.
Yes, it's XYZ 123 pound. It's very easy to remember. Right. It's funny is there's another password generator. It's phraseology, and it's not real phrase. Like I just pulled it up. It's called XKCD, and if you look XKCD password generator, this is the kind of thing I'm thinking of. It may be a good starting point for a very complicated password, but in addition to that, you're actually getting a very long password to begin with spaces in it.
So explain that. So explain that for our listeners, because what is this XYCD and what does it look like?
So it's basically a kind of a funny cartoon with a generator attached with it, and it talks about those pieces that we were talking about with regard to how long it would take to basically to crack a password with various different things in it. And the funny thing is 4 words, 4 kind of random words with spaces in between is extremely hard because they're random words. If you add any punctuation or changes of notation, like using leet speak, this is where you replace some of the letters with numbers, you create even more complication. But it makes it easier to remember. So I'm just going to throw you one I just saw generated.
Okay.
Including point past more. That's the password. Including point past more. Oh. And if I generate another one, boom. Consider interior solution arm. These are random words, not related to you. That's the important point here.
Okay.
But the second point here is, because of the length, you can remember 4 words. Mm-hmm. And it's easier for you. If you have to capitalize one of them, you can capitalize the first one. You can make it a sentence. You can do a number of different things. The issue at hand here is, when you look at this is something which you could probably address from the point of view of understanding a phrase. Phraseology is just the ability for you to remember it better. What's your favorite thing to say?
Right. If we use it if we actually use it, right?
Yep. So remembering it, and then it gives you length. That length provides protection from a higher level processing. The people who build the bigger computers to find out what you're doing, to find out your password or whatever. It gives you protection. Is it foolproof? Nothing is foolproof.
Right.
Nothing. But
Right.
we're talking about levels of protection beyond. So, in other words, you want from a curtain in front of your house to a steel door. You
Okay.
know, that's your differential. You know, you took the shower curtain off the front of the front door, and you put in a steel door with properly set. That changes the security profile of your house greatly. That's
Right.
what people have. They have a curtain on their front door, which is basically somebody can just push aside and walk in. That's the effect of a password which is not sufficiently complex and not sufficiently long. So I'm
Okay.
just saying this is an idea. I do not want people to immediately say and point to the Cyber and Sanity broadcast told me to do this. I want you to think about it. I want you to use your brain and understand that. But
I think the thought process behind those four, that phraseology, that the four
mhm,
words, and we sometimes forget this, but the spaces between words matter too.
that's
Because
correct.
when you say I need an 8 character password, you're also telling the bad actor, all I have to do is randomize or extrapolate 8 characters.
Bravo.
But when you start putting a space in between there, a space is also a special character.
Hmm.
There's no characters in computing. A space is a character. It's a hidden one. It's a silent one, but it's still a character. It's a placeholder. And so what you're doing is you're randomizing to the hacker. Then when you say, I need 4 phrases, even the one that you had, there were the 4 words had different amount of characters. The
Yeah,
last one I think was more 4 character word. But as a hacker, I have to try to guess, is it 1 character to 8 characters or whatever? And I got to guess that one set, that one placeholder. And I have to guess where the spaces are. It makes it
mhm,
more complex. And that steel door now becomes a bit daunting. It's kind of like you go into in a subdivision of homes that may look identical. And if I was a thief, which one would I avoid?
yeah,
Well, and again, I'm not giving up any secrets here. This is a known issue. Anybody with dogs immediately gets a pass, right? That's one thing that a thief doesn't want to deal with. Anybody with a anybody with a yard sign that says a security company, right? The little placard that has the security name and number on there. That's a hard pass. Um, Although less of a hard pass than a dog because the some people buy signs just to put on their yards,
yep,
but it's sufficient enough of a deterrent for them to sit there and go, yeah, that's not low hanging fruit. And I think that's where we come to this, right? Um, are the doors and windows look resilient? Do they look, hardened? Do you have the yard sign? Do you have a dog barking in the back end? Is there video cameras or some type of, the doorbell cameras now? Is some of this stuff out there that would throw a red flag to a bad actor and saying, that house is a hard pass. I'm moving on to the next one. We don't want to be the low hanging fruit for the passwords. And I think that's kind of the takeaway here because you said there's nothing 100% secure, right?
that's right. Yeah, but we've gone over complexity. You need to
Okay.
add some complexity.
Yep.
You know, numbers and characters, etc. That complexity adds iterations for a hacker to find your password.
Right.
Length adds iterations.
Okay.
If you use common passwords, something that's already been used by yourself
Yeah.
between your work and your company, you're just providing a hacker a way, and especially if it's iterative.
Mhm.
Oh, yes. Password 123, password 1234, or password 1, password 2, password 3, or
Right.
password 1, bang, password 2, at sign, password 3, pound sign. You know, all you're doing is showing the hacker your pattern. And all the hacker needs to do is follow your pattern. You know, these are smart people who are doing criminal acts, most likely.
Yeah. So, and this now raises another question, right?
Hmm.
Everything that we have, and I see this almost every billing cycle now, is asking for paperless, is asking to pay your bills online, is asking to create an account, is asking for logging into one of their portals to get service, whatever it is, be it a service, being paying a bill, whatever. Everything is online. Everything is asking for a password. Everything is asking for some credentials to be passed on to give you the access you want. And that's great because you get your buying experience or you get your information online. The detriment here is just what you said. I can't reuse a password. I can't be iterative in my password generation. How do I remember all this stuff? Because
Hmm.
not 5 websites anymore that I have to log into. Now I've got hundreds potentially.
So there's two ways to do this.
Okay.
One, you can take a Microsoft tact, which indicates, and this is not just Microsoft, this is NIST, but
Right.
you have to have a system that provides the protection. So they say, don't change your password. What does that mean? Well, they require you
I was
to.
going to ask you that about that ruling because that's an important paradigm shift in this, but go ahead.
But what they're really doing is integrating two-factor or multi-factor authentication into your
Okay.
password. So
Okay.
if I say don't change your password, and you have a authenticator app on your phone, your authenticator app says, "Oh, did you try to log in here?" Yes. What's the number? You give it the number. It feeds back. It's okay for that person to log in. So it's your phone is coming up.
Mhm.
Biometrics are identifying you. You're logging into the application. So biometrics, for those who don't know, are your facial characteristic, your fingerprints, etc. Could be a code that you remember, but there's a secondary piece in which you're identifying yourself, and then furthermore, you're then taken to an application which challenges you and says, "Hey,
Yeah.
give me the number that the screen says, so I know it's you doing this stuff." Now that has happened, it can then say, "Okay, this is Angelo logging in," right?
Right.
So when you look at that, you're basically saying the password has gotten longer, but the piece on the end is the thing I don't ever have to remember. This is the thing the system provides for me. This is the functionality that brings along, which is a great way to go.
Yeah.
But it's not available everywhere. It's not available to access all things. So what do you do in the case where you truly have to keep a unique password? And I'm going to say, everybody, hello, unique passwords. Just have them.
Yeah.
If you the maximum amount of characters you can go, as crazy as it can be, just have them. Here's where this is what you need to make yourself happy.
Well
Password
then,
manager.
but Angelo, yeah, okay. So I get the ruling, I get the two-factor authentication where you have some type of authenticator app or whatever the Google equivalent is, or a third party that generates this type of stuff and contains it. But that's what we're talking about now is how do I keep track of all unique passwords? We're talking hundreds.
Yeah,
And how do I
absolutely.
generate a password when somebody says, "Hi, customer. We just got breached. We believe that your account's going to be affected. Please change your password now."
So these are called password managers.
Okay.
This is where you have a program which runs on your desktop, which runs on your iPad or your tablet device, which runs on your phone,
Okay.
which is synchronized. So there's a cloud environment. You don't need to worry about that. What you need to worry about is one password. That is the password to enter that system.
Okay.
So what happens is you create an account. That account has access to a set of passwords. Those are your passwords. If you lose access to the account, you
Yep.
lose all your passwords. Period. There is no going back. They're gone. There's different ways to kind of
Yeah.
get around that. To there's backup codes and stuff. But in the end, you're paying them to have a vault that provides security. And if that vault is breachable, then it's not useful. So the reality is, if you lose your key to the vault, you lose the vault in this case.
Yeah.
But what does it bring to the table? It brings to the table, one, the storage of all those passwords. Stop having to remember all those passwords.
Okay.
Two, it brings to the table password generation. So you can create a password. You can get kind of ridiculous on some of the size and complexity. Upper and lowercase characters, numbers, special characters, as of the exclamation points and the pound signs and all that. It looks like it's cursing in your password. That's what we're talking about.
But just
the reality
a long word.
Oh, and I've seen some very interesting passwords generated. It's like, oh, got to change that one. But suffice to say, these password managers enable you the ability to not have to remember those passwords. So that's why I say it's kind of a dual effort. You have the passwordless route you can go when the system provides and is able to do so. And then you have the password managers creating complex passwords that are not in any way reflective of you. They're just a random set of characters and numbers and special characters that help you secure your data online. If you come to find your bank has been breached and their data has been their user data has been pulled out, you can then proudly say that you did not have a copied password in their system. It is a completely random number. So when they come in and say change your password, you can go, sure, doesn't matter to me. Click randomize, save. You don't care.
That's in that app. That's the password manager that can help you with that too.
Correct. Yes, exactly. That's what I was hitting on. Sorry, I ran a little astray. Personally, I'm using something called Keeper.
Okay.
I've used other ones in the past.
Yep.
This is what I'm using now, and I like it.
Yep.
Do your research, understand what you like. I just telling you what I like. The reality is when you go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I've noticed, even on my, like I have an iPhone, right? I've noticed even that Apple, and I'm going to pick on them for a little bit, has made concerted efforts to try to enhance their password capabilities. I noticed that you can share certain passwords with family members. Let's say, for example, your Netflix password or your Hulu password or your streaming service password, whoever it is.
Yep.
Your Amazon Prime, whatever. All those things can be shareable in a family environment. And I've noticed that on my iPhone, for the past year, they've included a family setting, right? And I would imagine the Keeper, the 1Password, all these other ones have some type of shareable capability to allow a group of you, a family unit, or however you want to divvy it up, the ability to share only certain passwords. Everything else is kept for you and you alone, and everybody has their own respective accounts for their respective password. I think that's smart. I think that's very prudent to be able to use those platforms to do that. And that, like you said, if something gets, let's say, suspect, I've also noticed on my iPhone, it says, hey, we've noticed when we scan these certain web things, it's been reported that this password needs to be changed. They even identify that for you.
Yep.
So why wouldn't I use this type of capability to randomize my password and make it unbearably long, share and lock it into a vault type of capability like you were talking about, where I have a master password or biometric that it only recognizes me as the user. And there's even, and by the way, on the iPhone, I noticed that there's a recovery. You identify a recovery person that in the cause of incapacitation or death or whatever, you have a legacy password that you can assign to a family member so they can recover your passwords, because let's face it,
it happens.
You don't think about it, but it happens, right? God forbid something happens. you're incapacitated. They have to get to your password because that has your medical ID. It maybe has your critical information or your portals to your doctors. They have to know it. You have to think through this. This is a whole new set of issues and problems just because of passwords, Angelo.
I know password
Creating a
authentication is
cottage
painful.
industry for us or what? But this is necessary today.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's completely necessary. We need a system that we can unify on, or we need systems that we can work with that have stringent security postures that allow us to rely on them to
Mhm.
identify us.
Yeah.
That's really what's needed. Username and password is dead. Long live MFA. MFA is getting questionable, but it's
Well, yeah. I was
it.
going to ask you about that because
Yeah.
multi-factor authentication or MFA, actually the two-factor authentication where you send, or it used to be here, enter your, for longest time,
Challenge code.
eBay was one of the first early adopters of that, I think,
Yeah.
where they allowed you to use two-factor authentication. But even that is, log in and then we'll send you to this text. How many times have I been sitting in bed with my iPad, going to one of these portals, and it says, "Oh, we're going to send the text to your phone number."
Hmm.
Well, I have one of those old iPads that's not connected to the cellular. So I'm like, well, I'm not running downstairs where my phone is plugged in and turned off to turn it on to get a two-factor authentication to get myself. It's just not that important.
Yep.
There's other ways of doing that. My thumbprint, my face recognition, whatever the biometric is, it's a way better way of sustaining it no matter what device that you may be on versus a text or anything. And plus of that, weren't you the one that said that getting text is not as secure anymore these days?
Oh no, SMS compromise is a common occurrence now.
Okay.
It is fairly simplistic, and the issue at hand is the reliance on that by
Mhm.
some of the more large companies makes me kind of question what they're doing. There's
Okay.
certain companies that still are just completely reliant on that, and that I question. I want to know why they don't allow for multi-factor authentication from systems like a password manager, which may have a multi-factor generator built into it, which
Okay.
may have functionality built into it that allows you to have a random code which is synchronized to a backend server. I know this is more complicated for people, but they've mitigated some of this complication through
Mhm.
QR codes. You go through the sign up process, use a QR code to set up multi-factor authentication. Sure. If you can set up multi-factor authentication, my opinion is to do it. If a website doesn't have it, question doing business with them. And I'm using the website in a generality. I want to make sure that we understand that when we talk about this is talking about places which have access to sensitive personal information that you might give them, cell phones, addresses, dates of birth, credit cards, etc. Question putting stuff on sites that their authentication method is simplistic, is basic. Complexity is the enemy of security, but without complex passwords and or different ways to challenge it, your password is basically the paper door that sits in front of your information.
Right. It's it's equivalent to having, I'm going to pick on the lock mechanisms of door locks, but um I think it was Quickset put out a rekeying option that you didn't have to go to a locksmith to
Yep.
rekey your front doors. You buy the hardware at your big box hardware supply. They give you the
Mhm.
master key for that one lock, and then they give you this special tool that goes in and you can set it, and then you can rekey it all to one key as long as it
Yep.
was this brand, this type of key, and basically redid your tumbler inside your lock. You didn't have to pull it out the core or anything, and be able to make all your doors the same key. The problem with that is if you had the right tools, you could potentially bump the lock, open the doors, and be able to get into the residence or the building or whatever that's being protected by these things. So you get a better tumbler, you get um, a better door set.
For those that you are not locksmiths or
Right,
amateur lock pickers, bumping is the ability to take a tool, put it in, and you tap, and it basically can momentarily align the cylinder, allowing you to have access. The
right,
issue with that is
right. Because
it,
the thing is, there's pins. The grooves on your key, when they get inserted, move the pins up and down to the groove. And if the pattern is correct, you can turn the key. If not, then it won't turn. Bumping the lock means I'm hitting those pins up at such a quick rate that they line up the moment, and timing is everything, at the moment that the grooves and everything else would be appropriate for the tumbler to turn without a key.
boom.
And then all of a sudden I get in. That's bumping, and there's tools for that, and locksmiths have the ability to do this. They don't advertise that, but you can probably do YouTube videos on a lot of this. But the point here is MFA, right? Coming back to the digital side of things, multi-factor authentication. Okay, so let's pick on Microsoft. Microsoft has an authenticator app.
Yep.
We go to these websites, we read up on the help files, how to turn on MFA or multi-factor authentication. I turn it on. Now I have one app. It's the authenticator. There's a few things that I hear people concerned about multi-factor authentication. One, if I have a shared environment where I have family members, don't they need multi-factor authentication too? And how do I set them up to be able to open the same account? The second thing is, more of the paranoid question is, well, if they just did this with two-factor authentication, they could do this SMS stuff. What's the point if they start attacking Microsoft and get to the authenticator application, and then I'm back at square one, which is all my passwords and all my authentication mechanisms are breached. So then what?
If to be frank, if the multi-factor authentication is compromised, it's
Right.
not a great place to be.
That's a Microsoft problem, and there's going to be a lot of people pretty
Yeah.
angry, or Google or whomever who issues this type of authenticator app.
This is similar to a conversation I remember having regarding what are we, going through a recovery analysis, and what do we do if Microsoft has issues? I guess we go home and wait, because if we're relying on them, we have to, to access stuff, then that's what we have to do. There are other firms out there, Google for one, Microsoft, even Yahoo can be used. Anybody remember Yahoo?
Yeah. Remember Yahoo?
Yeah. But the reality is, you can provide for yourself other mechanisms for that authentication. And one of those other mechanisms is a third party MFA provider, like what I use right now is Keeper.
Keeper, right.
The reality is they provide similar things. There's a myriad of them out there. You can use what you want. It's nice to be integrated with your authentication mechanism, so that way the challenge and everything is in one place. But having said that, there's a counter argument to that. That being, some people believe that you should have a physical token. Some people believe that, a physical token, I'm not even sure I have one anymore, literally has a counter on it. It's six numbers, and that's part of your password. And you would pull out the token, type in whatever the counter says. This counter was registered with the server. That server keeps track of what it should be. But the reality is, those keys are supposed to be random, and those keys are supposed to be increment on a periodic basis, like every 30 or 60 seconds. Mm-hmm. So your password literally is a minute old every single time, because your password is your base password and the addition to the MFA. And that keeps the time to be able to decrypt your password down to 1 minute or 30 seconds,
Right.
which is something with a complex password becomes almost impossible, because you don't have the time to make this happen. Maybe quantum computing will allow for these thoughts to happen, but the issue at hand is the expense of quantum computing versus what you want to get out of them. If someone wants to access my email using a quantum computer, then they have a lot of money already. So they want something else other than my money, of which I don't have. So it's
No, that's it, and that's a very fair point. I mean, Angela, you hit it on the head, right? You're reducing the amount of what they call dwell time or
compute time that they
computing time
have.
that you have, and there's not enough computing time to unscramble a randomly generated sequence of characters, right? There's just mathematically, it's not conducive to doing that. And if it's not mathematically conducive to doing that, that's one thing about threat actors that I really appreciate, is that they go for stuff that takes little to no effort for them.
Absolutely.
Right. And so thank God, there's a laziness component to a lot of bad actors.
Cost
There's
benefit analysis. How long does
cost
it take
benefit.
from?
There you go. It's a cost benefit analysis for them. It's not worth my time and effort to try to get to this because it's too complex.
Yeah.
So it really comes now down to an action on all of our parts and our listeners' parts, right?
Right.
What are you going to do with the information that was provided today? Right. And it comes down to this. The tools that Angelo was talking about, a password manager. Initially, I will say this: if you have gone to many websites that have a lot of passwords and have established a lot of these types of accounts, you're exposed. Period. No matter what, just the law of averages is against you. So obtaining a password manager, be it something that your hardware provider like an iPhone provides, be it a tool like Keeper that has that complexity and the ability to manage all that, and whatever the case may be, it is important enough for you to act on this information. Use these tools. The reason why the manufacturers are putting this, the reason why the manufacturers are designing programs like this, is because it is such a threat out there today. It needs to take action, needs you to take action to change your passwords. And I would say the first time that you go through this, they will give you a score of what your passwords look like. Oh, you've reused the password 15,000 times. Oh, this password is been seen. In some cases, they scan the dark web to see if your password has been exposed. In some cases, it's published, right, in the dark web by or are associated with companies that had a breach and reported that breach. Oh, these passwords are high alerts because there's breach reported on these passwords.
Yep.
So act on it. The longer you wait, the more you're giving the threat actor the confidence and the luxury of time to be able to unscramble it, guess your dog's name, your family member's name, or your favorite hobby, sport, or car, and then be able to start randomizing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 exclamation point, 2 @ whatever it is.
Yep.
The first time you put these password managers in play, I will say this: your first time that you're changing all your password is a bit of an effort. You're going through all of these passwords, all of them. It's worth the effort. Do it. Carve out a Saturday morning, a Sunday afternoon to go through this in quiet, just to have it scramble your password, remember your password, and put it in that vault. Once you do that, the peace of mind that you will get knowing that if something happens in the future to that company or that website, your password manager will identify it, will say, let's change it. We'll change it for you by a press of a button, and we'll hold on to it so that your shopping experience, your bill pay experience, whatever it is that you're doing in those websites will be remembered by this password manager, will be protected in that vault that only you have the password to by that password manager. And I think you will sleep a lot better knowing that if and when something happens in the future to one of those companies, your password manager will be there to see it, to identify it and saying, I saw that on the dark web. You really want to change that, and we'll walk you through it. It is compelling to have something like this in today's day and age in the threat landscape. The added bonus, I think, they do family sharing. They do the ability to share a password with a team, a friend, whatever the demographic that you want to share a password with, and it's worth it. And it doesn't compromise on the password integrity that you so desperately need.
I'd like to make a point.
Please.
Your password manager should also have multi-factor authentication. So just as a side note,
Right.
it's because username and password for it holds all your secrets. So you want a double check. If it's opened on another machine and somebody has your password and unlocks it, you want a challenge response that says, hey, did you want to unlock this? Or something along those lines.
Put your face in front of that thing and say, yep, that's me. Biometrics. Yep. Something that double checks it.
But
oh, well, Angelo, I hope we've imparted a bit of a reality check on passwords and the efficacy of what we've been told years ago. It's not effective. We need to build a better mousetrap, right?
And times will change. I just want to make this point.
Yeah.
What we did years ago was fine for the time.
Yeah.
Processing increased, the ability to find out usernames and passwords increased. People are constantly trying to figure a way in. There are vulnerabilities being used that bypass certain things. I'm telling you what you can do to protect your stuff to the best way possible.
Yeah.
And this is one entree into some other things you can do. But as a basic human being, please use unique, complex passwords.
Yep.
And try out a password manager so you don't have to remember them.
Yep. There's some really good ones out there. Angelo mentioned Keeper. We've seen some that are built into some systems. Like if you don't want to purchase a password manager, at least your iPhone, I believe Samsung has something very similar to protect your passwords and have a password manager component.
Mm-hmm.
Reputable ones are going to be very important. So check their reputation before getting them, because there's some free ones out there that there's nothing free in life, right? It's just you have to say it, right? They're going to get their cost from something, and it's going to be either they compromise on something or there's something that is an add-on feature that you needed to buy anyway. So
or they sell your data. So
well, I didn't want to go down that path because arguably if it's in an app store, it has some level of checks that have gone through, but it may not be as stringent of a protection employed in the vault or in the key generating or in whatever component. Check for reputable ones. This is one worthwhile investing in a proper tool to make sure you don't have to go through the unfortunate event of the repercussions of somebody's breach or your information be out on the dark web. So hopefully that imparts some good and intelligent conversation and explanation of why passwords are just not a convenience anymore. It's a mandatory thing, and it's something that really has to be protected. So with that, Angelo, I'm going to ask you your phrase, what's the, what's the best, what's your best word of advice here for this?
This is going to be like an if-then statement.
Sure.
Anybody wants to nerd out, I can do an if-then statement. Reality is still complexity is the enemy of security, except in relation to your password.
Right.
And even there, with multi-factor authentication,
yep,
you can provide additional securities that you could have an old password and still have the multi-factor authentication become the complex part of your authentication.
Yep.
Guys, guys, gals, whomever, it's still better just to have a complex password, a long complex password that's saved into a password manager that you can, a secure password manager that you can retrieve with multi-factor authentication enabled.
Exactly.
How was that for complexity is the enemy of security? I made that as complex as possible.
There you go. That's probably the only caveat to that is make sure your passwords are. And again, for me, it's always the best security device resides between our ears if we use it. And we hope that we are exercising, as Hercule Poirot would say, is exercising the gray cells, that we've stimulated your gray cells to be able to take action on this. We think it's very important. Folks, link and subscribe to Cyber Insanity. We try to put relevant content out there, and we appreciate you sticking with us and talking about passwords today. So with that, have a great and safe rest of your day.